Let's start with a really big, kind of controversial idea. The greatest strategic failure in marketing is something called the novelty trap. It's this belief that you need a new or shocking message to win. But what if that completely ignores the neurological fact that our brains, they use familiarity as the main shortcut for trust? Seriously, we've all been taught that to grow, you have to make a huge impact. You've got to be disruptive. But what if that whole idea is not just wrong, but it's actually working against you? I mean, think about it. When was the last time some totally unknown brand tried to sell you something expensive online? What was your gut reaction? I'm guessing it was skepticism, right? Even if the ad looked amazing, your brain's ancient little risk detector was probably flashing bright red. That's the novelty trap, right there in action. Companies are spending millions, literally billions, on disruption, but a lot of the time, they're just screaming into the wind because they haven't earned the right to be heard. But now, think about the brands you actually trust, the ones you'd recommend to a friend without even thinking. Chances are they didn't win you over with one big, shocking ad. No, they won you over with presence, with consistency, with just being familiar. In this explainer, we are going to unpack the neuroscience behind all of this. We're going to show you how the quiet, steady drumbeat of familiarity is probably the most powerful marketing force on the planet. We'll take apart the myth of disruption and give you a blueprint based on how the human brain actually makes decisions.
Okay, let's really dig into this statement because it gets right to the core of the problem. We spend so much time and money perfecting our message, right? Our slogan, our unique value prop, all of it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Your perfect message isn't failing because it's wrong. It's failing because it's a stranger. Let's look at the brain science here for a second. Our brains evolved over thousands of years in a world where anything unfamiliar was, frankly, a potential threat. A new plant could be poison. A strange animal could be a predator. And guess what? That ancient survival hardware is still running the show in our subconscious. So when your new and improved message shows up, it's not being processed by the logical part of your brain first. Oh no. It's being filtered by the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, which is asking one super simple question. Do I know this? Is it safe? Think of it like this. A marketer's perfect argument is like a beautifully crafted key. They spend all their time polishing it, making sure it's perfect. But they're trying to jam it into a lock that's covered by a giant heavy shield, the shield of unfamiliarity. Your first job isn't to have the best key. It's to convince the brain to lower that shield. And you don't do that with a better argument. You do it by just showing up again and again and again until you're not a stranger anymore.
And this slide, it just brilliantly illustrates that core conflict, doesn't it? Over on the left, you've got the novelty trap. This is the world of shock and awe, and it's super seductive. It promises these quick, massive wins. We see it in those Super Bowl ads that are hilarious, but you've totally forgotten them by Monday. We see it in viral stunts that get a ton of buzz, but build zero lasting value for the brand. The real problem is that these moments are, well, they're expensive for the brain to process. They demand your attention, but they don't build a lasting neural pathway. It's kind of like a firework, a brilliant flash, and then just darkness. Now look to the right. The Familiarity Principle. This is all about consistency. It's about being pervasive, not with loud, obnoxious ads, but with a quiet, steady presence. This is like building a road, one brick at a time. It's not exciting in any one moment. It's that podcast ad you hear every single week. It's that helpful chart you see on LinkedIn from the same company over and over. It's the newsletter that just shows up in your inbox like clockwork. You see, each one of those touch points is just a single brick. Alone, it's nothing. But over time, you build a superhighway right to your customer's decision-making center, a path of least resistance that they'll take by default, every single time. It's a huge shift from disruptive innovation to what you could call consistent cognitive imprinting.
So you might be wondering, if this principle is so incredibly powerful, why did it take so long for it to become, the central idea in modern marketing? To really get that, we need to look at a super critical turning point in our recent digital history, a moment when the old rules didn't just bend, they completely shattered. This whole shift from chasing a direct response to building a consistent presence, it wasn't really a choice. It was a survival adaptation.
Now, what's so interesting about this is how it connects this old school psychological finding from way back when to our digital world today. So back in the 1960s, a psychologist named Robert Zajonc ran these fascinating experiments. He'd show people a bunch of random symbols or foreign words. Some symbols were shown again and again, others just once. Later, when he asked them which symbols they liked more, people consistently picked the ones they'd seen more often, even if they couldn't consciously remember seeing them at all. The takeaway was huge. Familiarity doesn't need you to understand or agree with it. It breeds a kind of affection on a subconscious level. For decades, this was just a cool psych fact, but then let's fast forward to around 2022. The internet became a minefield, right?
We were getting bombarded with scams, fake reviews, super sophisticated phishing emails, even deepfakes. This signal-to-noise ratio just collapsed. Our collective digital immune system went into complete overdrive. All of a sudden, a slick website and some glowing testimonials, they weren't just unconvincing, they were actively suspicious. And that was the moment Zeonce's little lab finding from the 60s became maybe the most valuable asset in business. The only brands that could cut through all that skepticism were the ones we felt like we already knew. So the crucial point really is this. Imagine two salespeople. Salesperson A has this brilliant, data-driven, logically perfect pitch, but you've never met them before. Salesperson B's pitch is, it's just okay, but you see them every single week at your kid's soccer game. They're just there. When it's time to actually buy, who do you feel more comfortable with? 9 times out of 10, it's salesperson B. And why is that? Because the frequency of their presence has built up this trust buffer that no single argument, no matter how good it is, can ever replicate. The smartest companies figured out they needed to stop hiring salesperson A and start becoming salesperson B for their entire market. When you think of CRM software, Salesforce just pops into your head almost without you trying. When you think creative software, Adobe's right there. It's not because they won you over with one single amazing white paper. It's because they've invested billions over decades to become part of the furniture of the business world. Their real product isn't software, it's familiarity. The sale is just the final handshake in a relationship that started months, maybe even years ago. Okay, so if we accept that frequency is the key, the next obvious question is frequency of what? I mean, just bombarding people with ads is expensive and it's really annoying. That's not building a road, that's just creating a traffic jam. So the solution isn't about brute force, it's about elegant design. We have to build a system, an engine, that creates these touch points in a way that actually feels natural and helpful to the customer. We need to architect what's called a Neural Recurrence Loop, a system that's literally designed to make our brand a recurring positive signal in their mental landscape. The whole mindset just has to shift completely. A viral campaign? That's like chasing a sugar high. It's designed to get as much short-term attention as possible. But an architecture of trust, that's designed to maximize long-term mental availability. And mental availability is a pretty simple idea. How easily does your brand come to mind when a buying situation pops up? A viral hit might get you millions of views, sure. But if those people don't think of you 6 months later when they actually need what you sell, that attention was completely worthless. We're not trying to build a billboard here. We're trying to build a landmark. And this architecture isn't just one big thing. It's a really sophisticated machine with 3 interlocking layers, and each one is designed to engage the customer's brain at a different stage of their journey, from being a total stranger to becoming a believer. So let's break down the blueprints of this trust engine. So this system works like a loop with 3 distinct layers. Let's start with the ambient layer. This is your foundation. Its only job is to exist and just be passively absorbed. This is not about getting a conversion, it's just about recognition. Think of the branded water bottle on a conference speaker's desk, the little logo at the end of a YouTube tutorial, a simple, useful chart shared on social media with your logo tucked in the corner. You're not asking for anything. No email, no click, no sale. You are just associating your brand with value and presence. You're becoming part of the scenery. Next, the machine kicks into a higher gear with the contextual layer. This is where you go from being passive to being actively useful. Now the customer has a problem. They are actively looking for a solution. This is when your super detailed blog post comparing different options shows up at the top of Google. It's your how-to video that solves their exact problem. You're not just scenery anymore. Now you're a signpost, pointing the way. And all that trust you built in the ambient layer makes them way more likely to click your link instead of a stranger's. And finally, you have the affirmation layer, and this is the psychological closer. The customer is almost there, but they need to de-risk their decision. This is where they see a trusted influencer in their field mention your product, or they read a case study from a company just like theirs. This isn't you saying how great you are, it's the world they already trust telling them that you are the safe choice. This 3-part sequence, from recognition to utility to proof, is what creates this unbreakable loop of trust. So, how do you even measure if this architecture is working? For decades, marketing has been obsessed with direct response stuff. Click-through rates, cost per acquisition, conversion rates. And look, those things are still important, but they only measure the very last step of the journey. It's kind of like judging a farmer only by the moment they pick the fruit and completely ignoring the months of planting, watering, and taking care of the soil. Clicks are a lagging indicator of trust that you've already built. Brand recall velocity, now that's a leading indicator. It asks this: when someone in your target market feels the pain that you solve, does your name spring to mind instantly and without any effort, or do they have to go searching? The higher your recall velocity is, the smaller your competitors' chances are. The The whole goal is to make the act of choosing your brand feel less like a decision and more like a reflex. You win not at the point of sale, but at the point of thought. All right, so we've seen the what, the architecture of this trust engine, we've seen the how, those 3 layers of engagement, but now we really need to understand the why. Why is this approach so devastatingly effective? To answer that, we have to go even deeper, into the fundamental operating system of the human mind, and really exploit its most powerful shortcut. It all comes down to this concept called cognitive ease. Just think of your brain as having 2 employees. System 2 is the hardworking, analytical researcher. It's slow, it takes a ton of energy, and it fact-checks everything. It's a great employee, but man, it gets tired fast. Then you have System 1. It's the fast, intuitive, gut instinct manager. It makes thousands of decisions every day based on patterns and shortcuts. Its main goal is just to conserve energy. So when you show up with a new, complex message, you're forcing the brain to give that task to the overworked System 2. But when you present something familiar, the lazy but really powerful System 1 manager steps in and says, "Oh, I know this one. It's fine. Approved." Your goal as a marketer is to get your proposal onto System 1's desk, not System 2's. You're not really selling a product. You're providing the comfort of a known quantity. Familiarity literally deactivates the brain's natural skepticism filter. And this leads right into another really powerful idea, the truth effect, sometimes called the illusory truth effect. It's the reason political slogans are repeated until you can't stand them anymore. It's why myths and urban legends stick around even after they've been proven false. You see, the brain doesn't really distinguish between a fact you've heard 10 times and a lie you've heard 10 times. It just registers how fluently it can process the information. The easier it is to recall and think about, the truer it feels. So every single time a customer sees your consistent brand visuals or your message, you're not just building name recognition, you are literally neurologically increasing how true your claims feel. Repetition doesn't just build memory, it builds belief. And all of this culminates in something called the availability heuristic. Just imagine your car's transmission dies. It's a super stressful, high-stakes situation. Are you really going to spend the next 8 hours making a spreadsheet of every mechanic in a 50-mile radius, reading hundreds of reviews and cross-referencing prices to find the absolute mathematically best option? Of course not. Nobody does that. Your brain is going to immediately serve up the 1 or 2 names you already know, the ones you've heard on the radio, the one whose van you always see driving around town. That's the availability heuristic. You don't choose the best option, you choose the most available option in your mind. By building familiarity, you are preloading your brand as the answer, ready to go the moment your customer's problem shows up. You've basically built a psychological moat that no shiny new competitor can easily cross. So we get the theory. We understand the deep psychology that makes this whole thing work. Now let's get practical. How do we actually translate this powerful theory into a concrete, actionable blueprint? How do we engineer this process? Well, fortunately, there's a proven framework we can follow. The framework is called the 7-11-4 sequence, a concept that's been popularized by some brilliant B2B marketing experts. And while the exact numbers might change a bit for you, the principle is what's really important. It suggests that to move a person from being a stranger to a trusted acquaintance, you need roughly 7 hours of total engagement time spread out across at least 11 different touchpoints in at least 4 different locations. Let's break that down. 7 hours might sound like a lot, but that includes passive stuff like listening to your podcast, watching your videos, reading your big articles. The 11 touchpoints are just the individual interactions, and the 4 locations, that part is critical. This multi-channel approach is what creates that feeling of omnipresence. It's not just seeing you on LinkedIn. It's seeing you on LinkedIn, then hearing you on a podcast, then getting your newsletter, and then seeing your ad on a trade website. That triangulation makes your presence feel organic and credible, not forced or spammy. So here it is, your checklist for mastery. First, architect for visual consistency. This is totally non-negotiable. Your logo, your brand colors, your fonts, this is your visual anchor. Every single time a customer sees it, a tiny neural connection gets a little bit stronger. If you rebrand every couple of years, you're taking a sledgehammer to that entire neural structure and starting over from scratch. Second, engineer the 7-11-4 sequence. Be strategic about it. Map out your customer's digital world. Where do they hang out? Where do they learn? Then build your ambient, contextual, and affirmation content to show up in those places. Third, automate the low-friction drip. This is all about delivering value at scale without asking for anything back. Think automated email sequences that share helpful tips, not just sale announcements. Just be that relentlessly helpful presence in their world. And finally, you need a new KPI. Measure trust latency. How long does it take from the first time someone hears about you to the moment they're willing to actually buy from you?
Your goal is to systematically shrink that time period by optimizing your familiarity engine. This, not just lead volume, becomes your new North Star.
And what's the end game here? What does all this work lead to? Well, mastery is that moment your brand achieves what you could call category default status. When someone says, "Get me a tissue," you think Kleenex. When they say, "Photocopy this," you think Xerox. These brands are so familiar they have literally become the verb for the action itself. They're no longer just a choice in a competitive market. They are a universal truth. This is the holy grail. It's when you finally stop competing on features and price because you've already won on the unassailable battlefield of the subconscious mind. So let's bring this all back to that initial lie we talked about, that you need a better message. The truth is, you need a more present message. The familiarity principle isn't just a tactic, it's a fundamental shift in your entire strategy. It's about trading that fleeting sugar high of novelty for the deep, compounding power of consistency. It's about understanding that the human brain doesn't buy from the cleverest brand, it buys from the brand it knows. So stop trying to be disruptive. Stop trying to shock and awe. Instead, commit to the quiet, disciplined, relentless work of just being there. Build your architecture of trust, one layer at a time. Because in the end, growth isn't about a single transaction you win. It's a relationship you earn. It's a pattern of trust that is learned over time through the simple, unshakable force of familiarity.